Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox. So, Tammi Mac. Hey, Tammi Mac. Yeah, ooh, that. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Hey, so you know it's Tammi Mac. Hey, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Good evening, everybody. I am Tammi Mac. Now, the issue of reparations for descendants of slaves is not a new topic by a long shot. But now, more than ever, more people, Black and white, are speaking out and demanding restitution for the free labor and systemic oppression that African Americans face. What should reparations look like? As conversations about this issue begin to turn into actions, the question is, will Congress pass this order? And what has taken so long for Black America to receive what's due to them? Where do reparations reside? Where do reparations reside? I can't even get that out. That's a tongue twister there. Well, the business of being Black tonight is reparations for African Americans. Please welcome a David M. Rubenstein Fellow at the Brookings Institute and Professor of Sociology at the University of Maryland, College Park, Dr. Rashawn Ray. Hi, Dr. Rashawn.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I look forward to this important conversation.
Man, I got a feeling you're going to bring it tonight. Senior Fellow of Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program and author of Know Your Price. Let me tell you, that's what my mama used to tell me. Valuing Black lives and property in America's Black cities. Andre Perry is here. Hi, Andre.
What's good, Tammy?
Reparations advocate and host of Politics in Black podcast, Chad Brown, is here with us. Hi, Chad.
Hi, good evening, Tammy. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And co-chair of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, Los Angeles, Friday Jones in the house. Hey, Friday.
Hi, how you doing, Miss Tammi Mac?
Now, is that the new this new coalition that the governor's gotten together for California that you're a part of, or that's not what that reference?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by the governor has gotten together, but we were certainly instrumental in the California reparations bill, AB 3121, along with CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. So, yes. Okay,
so you're not giving the governor credit for all of that. That's basically what you're saying, right?
No, he was just the last stop. He was the final stop. His signing that bill might be why all the Republicans are trying to get him out of here on a recall. It's like crazy here. So
but listen, that recall. Listen, look, I know this ain't what we're talking about, but let me just say it real quick, Friday. The recall is probably the best thing that done happened to us, to be honest, whether you're Republican or a Democrat, because, he's keeping the unemployment rolling like most states are not. They're getting rid of it. And he's got this reparations committee that he's putting together. And I think if that recall wasn't there, he might recall a little bit of those ideas.
Right. That's what I said. So we're on the same page, Tammy.
Yeah, exactly. So I traditionally start off every show with one question, and I'm going to ask each of my guests. And Andre, let's start with you. And the question is, why? Why should Black people care? Why should Black people care about reparations? Look, we own our own these days. We're owning companies. We're millionaires. We're billionaires. We got land. We got stocks now. Why should Black people care about reparations?
Well, there's still a moral debt to be paid and a financial one. The racial wealth gap is, as 2016 numbers, 170,000 for white median family income compared to 17,000 Black median family income. And so when you're talking about what predicts for longevity, for education, for in every meaningful quality of life measure, it's wealth. And so we were robbed of those opportunities. So it's clear for me that reparations, whether how well you're doing off now or your children, how well they're doing, there's still a debt to be paid that we deserve.
Chad, why should we care? Why should Black people care about reparations?
Well, when we look at Black America constituting approximately 15% of the American population, However, we only control and own 2.6% of the wealth of about $100 trillion in national wealth. So when you say, we have billionaires, et cetera, we are underrepresented across every quintile of wealth in this country. And if you look at Black America and our 2.6% of wealth, it's highly calcified as well at the top. So we have a small percentage, less than 10% of Black Americans owning a vast majority of that 2.6% of the wealth. So the bottom half of Black America, last data that I saw was worth less than $1. So it is essential for us. We are largely living in abject poverty, although we do have a illusion that we are doing better than what we are.
It's just an illusion, huh? Wow. Because that's what people always bring up. Whenever you talk about reparations with Black folk, they always start, well, there's Oprah. Well, you got LeBron. I always think that to be an interesting comeback to reparations. Dr. Rashawn, why should Black people care?
Oh, look, it's due us. In some sort of way, we have over-individualized some of these outcomes. Systemic racism is set up for a few of us to become successful, to supposedly justify the reason why we don't need to atone for the past. Some of these stats that we just heard thrown out, when we say it in a different way, Black people have 10 times less wealth than white people do. In education, having a college degree does little to close that gap. College-educated whites have 7 times more wealth than college-educated Black people do. So we cannot simply outclass our way out of this. As Andre said, this is about wealth. It's not simply about income. And more importantly, it is a moral imperative and the right thing to do. This is something that we know reparations have been given to other groups, have been given to Native Americans, have been given to Japanese Americans who have been interned. The United States have played a continuous role in Jewish Americans and people around the world who were impacted by the Holocaust to receive reparations. Black people are the only group that have been systematically discriminated against by the federal government that has not received reparations, and it's time for that to change.
Wow. You say you can't outclass this thing, huh?
That's exactly right. Look, it doesn't matter what level of education we have, what amount of income we have, how good of job we have. We know, unfortunately, that racism still matters. And more importantly, the legacy of racism still matters, not just slavery, but also thinking about Jim Crow, thinking about convict leasing, thinking about segregation and redlining, all the things that's wrapped up in Andre's book and some of the research that we've published at Brookings highlights something important. In 1860, Black people's physical bodies was worth $3 billion, just our physical bodies, more than railroads and factories put together. We haven't even gotten to the products that our bodies and our labor produced. It is time for that money to be repaid back. There have been opportunities in the past for that to happen. The United States has not done it, and the time is now.
Yeah, I'm a little pissed now because you said, a white person makes 7 times more. A college educated white person makes 7 times. Did you say 7 or 17? 7 times more.
Yeah.
Than a Black person. And I'm thinking, but we paid the same amount for the degree. I'm a little upset about that one. Okay. But is it our fault, Andre, that
don't forget Friday. Don't forget Friday answering that question.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Andre. I'm going to try to answer this in a way that I think the audience can understand. But the wealth gap is essentially our inheritance that has been deferred. That there's no other way to look at it. And for me, if you have an Ice Cube who he created that 3-ball league, I forget what the name of it's called.
The Big Three.
The Big Three. He sought investors in the United States and was not able to capitalize that venture. If you think about a Jay-Z was something like a 1% owner of the Brooklyn Nets. That is not material ownership. If you think about Ciroc and Sean Puffy Combs, it gave the appearance that he actually owned, that brand significantly. I hate to say this, but he's more of a brand ambassador. So if the people that society would tell us, well, go look at these people have made it, no, they really have not. And I think we kind of saw that this weekend in the message that Sean Combs put on his Instagram. And I think that's the most relatable way. The wealth gap literally is our inheritance deferred. 1910, the greatest land ownership we had, 15, I think, million acres of US rural land, we are down to 1%. So if you ask why should we be interested, if we do not, 2053, we were supposed to be approaching zero in terms of net wealth as a people. Thanks to COVID, I believe we're going to get there a lot sooner than 2053.
So not a dream deferred, but an inheritance deferred, right?
An inheritance deferred, yes, indeed.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm going to stay with you on this question then, Friday. Is it our fault? Is it Black people's own fault that we aren't at the level of our white counterparts when it comes to the economics of America?
Absolutely not. I am amazed that we're still here, if I'm going to be honest. Out of my four grandparents, only 3 are descendant of U.S. Slavery. One is a kind of mixed with Caribbean and indigenous descent. And by all metrics, we as a people have worked. We had Callie House like in 1865, right? She came out with looking to build a pension for the freedmen almost immediately after slavery. And she coalesced and she had tens of thousands of former slaves who were working with her in order to build out a pension. And the United States government shut her down. We have been actively in this space for reparations literally since slavery. We had rebellions. You can't get past name some of our rebellions. You had Nat Turner, you had Dessalines was in Haiti, but what's the other one? Denmark Vesey, that's the D that I'm thinking of. You had Denmark Vesey. This is during slavery, where we really tried to free ourselves, one event after another, and just could not get up under it. So it's absolutely not our fault. When you have in today a Bruce Beach, that's like California talk. Bruce Beach is trying to be turned back from the county to the Bruce family, and you have a city council member literally say, an assembly member say during the hearings, well, we want to make sure that the people of Manhattan Beach continue to access the beach once it's turned back. Why should they? No one gave the Bruces their full compensation when the land was taken away in the first place. So no, we've done everything that we could. We've generation after generation come back to this conversation, and it's time to finish it once and for all. Not our fault.
It's always interesting to me how we Black people have to be the ones to play nice.
What's interesting, I say this all the time.
Andre, we're going to take a quick break and come right back. I'm coming straight to you. They are busy in this chat room. So I'm going to study the chat, and I see you, soulmates. We're coming right to you next, too, on the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul. Tonight, the business of being Black is every Black person's business, and that's reparations. Let's roll to the chat. Ooh, Kim Johnson. Oh, loving your pink, Tammi Mac. Thank you. Thank you very much. Darlene says, good evening, family. Good evening, Darlene. Thank you for riding with us tonight. And then we have Deborah Will, who says, Tammi Mac and guests, yay, let's go. Reparations. Joey Verge says, I see you, Ray. Bruce Jones says, we got nothing in comparison with other groups in this country. Get serious. I don't think anyone said we got anything in comparison. Yeah, Joey, I think you misunderstood someone. What he was saying was every other ethnicity has gotten their reparations. However, Black people have not. So you misunderstood what was said, my brother. Kelly Pryor says, preach, Chad, preach. And peace and reparations, fam, from one of our soulmates. Incog is here. He says it's quite simple. If atrocities have been committed towards the Jews and Native Americans and they have been compensated, it's only fair for the government to compensate Black folks for the atrocities. All right. Here's fifth human. The rest of me, I'm confused what that means. 3/5 human. Okay. Okay. We get to 3/5 human. I'm gonna move on. Our other soulmate says Black Americans are 6% of the population in California, but are 40% of the homeless. Okay. Jason Bourne says, my man, Illusion. Yes. I'm telling you, you got us all with that illusion. That illusion. You got us all with that one. And then our soulmate here says, no apologies received. Give us our money. And Kelly says, thank you, Dr. Rashawn Ray. Thank you. This chat is lit tonight. So I won't be able to come to all of you because y'all are going, but keep the conversation going. Bruce Jones says, Tulsa said it all, built it and they burned it down. Theo says, we always have to play nice. That's what I said, Theo. We always have to play nice. And well, we talk about Tulsa a lot, but I get a little nervous when we start talking about one specific place, because we all know about all of the other massacres that happened: Chicago, Thibodeau, New Orleans. I mean, they go on and on. There's so many massacres that happened where Black folk in America decided to be self-sufficient and build their own and buy from their own. And then here they come, all up in our Kool-Aid, messing it up, with their splendor. So Friday is like, what, Tammy?
Tammy, I think you make a great point. Going back to your previous question, is it our fault? And we have to look at that history of racial terrorism and truthfully dispossession, because what doesn't get talked about enough in the Tulsas and the Chicagos is how wealth was extracted and stolen out of our communities as a result of those race massacres. So we were not only robbed of our lives in many instances, but also robbed of the ability to pass along wealth intergenerationally. So absolutely not our fault, but it is time for redress.
Andre, before we left for break, we were going to you. So you remember that thought? If not, go move on to it.
Yeah. I was just going to add on. We talk as if times that discrimination doesn't exist today that demands reparations. A lot of my policies look at housing devaluation. One study that we did, my colleagues did, that we looked at home prices in Black majority places where the share of the Black population is 50% or more, and we compared those home prices to places where the Black population is less than 1%. And a lot of people can tell that Black homes in Black neighborhoods are lower priced, but they'll say it's because of education and crime. But those are things you can control for in a study, and that's what we did. And when we controlled for those factors, we found that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity. And just to put that in perspective, $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses based on the average amount the Blacks use to start up their firms. It would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees based on the average amount of a public four-year education. It would have covered all of Hurricane Katrina damage. It's replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over. It's a big number. And that's just in 2017 housing discrimination. And so when we talk about reparations, certainly we should talk about slavery, Jim Crow racism, historic discrimination, but wealth is being extracted from our communities, from our bodies today, from criminal justice system, from housing. And so this is not something from a long time ago. And by the way, the land theft wasn't that long ago anyway, from the farmers and all that. So for me, this is important because we are continuously being robbed. Until we address our discrimination now, it's going to be very hard to address it then. So reparations for me is not just about getting what it's owed, it's about demanding justice whenever there is injustice in our face.
It was interesting. We had a young lady on our show with the Fair Housing and Discrimination organization. She's suing I guess her mortgage company, her lending company, and the appraisers, because they originally appraised her house at 125, then 110, and then she decided to put a white man in her house and whitewash her entire house, and the appraiser came and appraised it at $250,000, all within a span of 3 months.
Wow.
So
Yes.
it is very interesting. But I have to ask, because I'm hearing you, Andre, talk, but I'm going to take this question to Chad. Chad, if we do get reparations now, and if reparations is about repairing those things that that were broken and has left Black people where we are today, what happens after? So let's say we all get reparations. The system still exists. Does reparations make the system go away?
No, reparations does not make the system go away, but we have to understand that reparations entails more than just direct payments as well. It is essential to have direct payments as a component of a reparations program, but we also need comprehensive policy and policy reform. So we need to address all socioeconomic areas where you heard Andre talking about housing discrimination, where you talk about environmental racism, all the separate instances, mass incarceration, where we are being literally dispossessed and wealth is being extracted out of our communities. And in many cases, we are, as a population, being murdered in the streets, as we've seen with some of the recent police actions and brutality. So reparations, while it is a component of it, restoring that stolen wealth, it also has to include across all of society redress and restitution.
Dr. Rashawn, how do you feel about that? I mean, does reparations equal to a huge system adjustment as well?
No, I mean, I think Chad nailed it. I mean, part of what we have to realize is that reparations is about paying a debt. It's about restitution. When we start talking about changing the system, we have to go through a truth and reconciliation process to then ameliorate systemic racism. And part of it is recognizing the way that systemic racism plays out. We just heard Andre talking about housing. We could also talk about entrepreneurship, where during COVID, not only were Black businesses less likely to get money from the Payment Protection Program from the Small Business Administration, but Black businesses were also much more likely to close during COVID. A Stanford study showed that over 40% of Black small businesses have closed during COVID-19 because of lack of access to resources. This is the way that systemic racism plays out. So part of the thing that we have to recognize about reparations is that it shouldn't solely come in the form of cash payments, but instead it should be about restoring local communities. And part of the thing that Andre and I have written about is really laying out a package to address some of these wealth gateways that really lead to racial inequality in America. For example, reparations could also be about paying a person's tuition to go to college. It could also be about paying back student loan debt. We know that Black people who attended these historically Black colleges and universities that are just great and beacons of hope and resiliency for Black Americans. We also know that people who attended those places oftentimes got subprime loans for trying to get the same education that a person would get at a predominantly white institution. We also know that when it comes to entrepreneurship, that Black people have less access to capital. So part of thinking about that could be grants to start up small businesses. And also we know that money could be put into housing for not only putting down payments on homes, but also housing revitalization to focus on neighborhoods that have been historically hit when it comes to Jim Crow segregation. But not only these historic neighborhoods, because many of them have been gentrified, but also focusing where Black people live now. So there are a string of ways where reparations can actually be applied. And as we've written about, federal land is the way to do that. It gets back to the heart of how we talk about reparations. The 40 acres and a mule that was promised Black people that General Sherman had laid out and then was rolled back after Lincoln was assassinated. Part of that can be focusing on land, because over 25% of land in the United States is owned by the federal government. That land can be sold, that land can be leased, that land can have equity taken out on it, and that is one of the pathways to pay for reparations.
Yeah, that's why I've been holding out on my school loan, Dr. Rashawn. I'm waiting for them reparations to come through for a sister. Come through for a sister. Let's take a quick break and we'll come right back. I see you, soulmates. Ronnie Lynn says, Ronnie Lynn says, love those pillows, Mr. Perry.
Hey, you got to have a WAP pillow. You got to have What reputable scholar does not have a WAP pillow? You gotta have a WAP pillow.
And Princess Robinson says, Mr. Perry got history lessons on his pillow. Hashtag relevant dude. We'll be right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Let me go dive into this chat room here. Some of y'all saying stuff I can't say on the TV, y'all. I can't. They're not even bad words, but it's just, you know, sometimes things ain't for public discussion. Just sometimes. There's no reason for New York City, Chicago, or any city to have over 1,000 vacant lots. This land could be part of the reparations package. So many wasted assets that could be allocated to cover reparations. Dr. Rashawn, you talked about that, of course. It wasn't promised to Black people, but the descendants of those enslaved here. I'm assuming you're saying reparations in general wasn't promised to Black people, but to the descendants of those enslaved. That though, I'm confused because isn't that Black people? Is that not Black people? That's Black people, right? The descendants of enslaved would be Black people. I don't know who you talking about, but we talking about Black people. So here's a question. This always comes up when we talk about reparations. Who gets reparations? Who gets it, Chad?
So we subscribe to a test that's been put forth by Dr. William Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen, who are two of the foremost Black reparations scholars in the country. And it's a two-pronged test. So first, there's a lineage standard, which simply means that you can trace at least one ancestor back to American or US chattel slavery. And then secondly, there's an identity standard or a self-identifying standard where you have identified as either Black, African-American, or Negro on an official document at least 12 years prior to either the implementation of a reparations program or the formation of a commission to study reparations. So it's a two-pronged test and it's double knotted. So it really is very simple for us to identify who would be eligible.
So both of those things have to be intact. You have to at least be able to trace one ancestor and identify yourself on public record as Black, African-American, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, because we want to avoid, go ahead.
No, the controversy when it comes to who is around what claim. Now, there are different claims for reparations. Now, if you're talking about slavery, you're talking about the descendants of the enslaved in America. But if you're talking about redlining, you're talking about Black people who lived in redlined areas. And sometimes those people were not the descendants of the enslaved. So there are different claims for reparations. I mean, in general, it falls for slavery, Jim Crow racism, and historic discrimination in housing, criminal justice, and in other areas. But I always say that there are different claims for reparations. All of them are legitimate, and they should have different pathways to determine who gets what and when and how much.
Our Prince Man in our chat room says it's time to stop begging for reparations. We aren't going to get our money. Do y'all think these politricksters want to see us prosper? Integration messed us up. They bombed many areas where we lived. We spoke about that earlier today, Prince. Friday, you want to take that? Are we begging? Shouldn't we be too proud to beg as Black Americans? What are we doing?
No, we are not doing, was it TLC? We're not doing that. Well, this is not about begging. Look, our advocacy, I think, is built into us, and people who really perceive the work that we do. And I let people know, outside of my full-time job, reparations is really like my second other job that I do around the clock. And it's not begging. If you, I think it's a Fannie Lou quote, and I'm going to get it sort of wrong, but the gist of the quote is, if maybe it's not her, but it's if you don't say anything, your oppressors will think that you enjoyed it or you liked it. I forget how the quote goes, but that's the gist of the quote. So no, we don't like this. We don't accept it. We never have. We've always been self-advocates. We still are. Other groups do. We will continue to do. And I will make noise until the wheels fall off, until the checks start flowing, it's our responsibility to self-advocate. No one else is going to self-advocate for us. In California, ACA 5 failed so badly, and that was to repeal Proposition 209, which was basically to allow for whatever I don't want to say quotas, but whatever your representation is in California's population, those would be the metrics for engaging the state, for contracting, for admissions to college, for all of these different things.
Was that the affirmative action bill? Yeah,
that was the affirmative action bill. And so, we fought for that because particularly in education, we could see where the underrepresentation was for our students, for our college students. And we had pushback from across all of the coalition and the multiple ethnicities. We had all of this pushback. So if we don't do the work, no one's going to do it for us. And at that point, it's not begging. It's no way you can use the language of you're begging. And with the GOP doing everything that they're doing with voter rights and all of this Jimmy rigging that's sort of happening on a wide scale that really is throwing some areas of this country back into Jim Crow, what is the alternative?
Yeah. Jason Bourne, our soulmate, says it's not about begging, it's about an invoice that is 400 years overdue. Cut an invoice. I like that a lot.
That's an excellent comment. And just succinctly, reparations is not us begging. It is a debt that is owed to our community. It is a failed promise of this country to, at several different junctures, make the right decision. And so now we are saying that debt is still owed. It has come due. And as you say, it's time to pay that invoice.
Let me tell you, if I don't pay my credit card bill, they don't stop begging for their money.
Exactly.
They don't be like, well, we ain't gonna beg for this credit card.
They start begging a little more, don't they?
I don't pay my card note. They ain't gonna, they gonna keep calling me till they get their money. So I don't even know what you talking about, soulmate. We gonna keep calling till we get our money.
That's right.
Who should not have the money? Like, my question is always, if you are biracial, for instance, I have a girlfriend who, and I don't even know if the term is biracial anymore. I feel it feels weird to say that word because it seems so antiquated. But I have a girlfriend who's her mother's white, and her father's white, her mother's black. And she was told that she is the descendant not only of slaves, but of slave masters.
And
but it's more about the injury. It's more about the injury. Yeah. If you were injured, your family was injured.
Is she owed reparations if she identifies as black and can trace one of those ancestors back to slavery?
Those are the only two qualifiers, Ms. Tammi Mack. So absolutely yes.
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 Andre, I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say that, what Friday and Chad outlined is that her ancestry, her black ancestry, there was injury there. She should be owed. Now, who am I to say if they want it or not? I don't care. But the fact of the matter is her family members, or even she may have been injured by discrimination, and she's owed.
Right. Yeah. I always wonder, for those who are against reparations, when the checks come, are they going to be like, nah, I'm good?
No.
Nah, I don't want your charity. I don't want your little reparation charity.
We can ask Burgess Owens when it happens. We can ask Congressman Burgess Owens when that happens.
We should. We really should. When Congress thinks about what should be taken into consideration with paying reparations, should they not only consider slavery, but every system that Black Americans had to deal with post-slavery, like Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the Civil Rights Movement? Should all of it collectively be a number?
So what we believe is that reparations should target closing the racial wealth gap. And so again, going back to some of the numbers that you heard earlier, at 15% of the population, only 2.6% of the wealth. We believe that a reparations program should bring us more in line with our percent of population, with our wealth and what we own as far as amongst the national wealth of this country. Now, outside of that, policy measures absolutely need to be instituted, again, across all sectors of society to repair the harms that have been incurred by our community and others that, you know, have melded into our community or look like us. So reparations, however, is direct redress to the lineal descendants out of chattel slavery, legalized Jim Crow, and who continue to suffer the accrued disadvantages of those institutions and ongoing atrocities.
All right, I'm gonna go get a little reparations right now in this commercial break, because we got to get, we got to find out where our money resides too. We'll be right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black is reparations. If you're just joining us, our panelists tonight are so fire. First of all, a David M. Rubenstein Fellow, the Brookings Institution, and Professor of Sociology at the University of Maryland, College Park. Dr. Rashawn Ray is with us, Senior Fellow of Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program and author of Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. Andre Perry hanging out, reparations advocate and host of Politics in Black podcast, Chad Brown, and co-chair of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, Los Angeles, Friday Jones. Listen, Dr. Rashawn, why is this an argument? You spoke to other groups of people who have been repaired. You spoke to the Japanese internment, the Jewish community and the Holocaust, and the Native Americans. So then why is this an argument with Black people?
Well, I mean, look, it shouldn't be an argument. I mean, within the Black population, I think part of it is that the narrative that we've been given, even about ourselves, has been warped. What we have learned in schools, for example, the discussion and the policy debate and the policy legislation is going on right now in certain states around critical race theory, which is simply a framework established by Derek Bell and other scholars that have been around for decades as a way to understand the way that racism permeates social institutions. Is something that has even impacted Black Americans. And for some reason, we feel like that in America, that it is still unjust for us to ask for justice. And I think that's the bottom line. Look, there's one pathway that we haven't talked a lot about. Of course, people know a lot about slavery. People are starting to layer up about Tulsa and the many other predominantly Black cities that were fully functional and highly successful, that were also wiped out due to white supremacy. But we haven't talked a lot about New Deal policies that came after World War II that really established not just the middle class, but the white middle class. See, after the Great Depression, what we saw is that unemployment almost hit an all-time high. What does America do? We typically go to war. Part of the response to that was that the New Deal policies created two main things. First, it created the GI Bill, and then it created Social Security and things around work hours, around minimum wages. Black people were excluded from these policies. There were two occupations excluded from Social Security. That was domestic work and farm work. 75% of Black workers in the South worked in those occupations. And then when it came to the GI Bill, Black veterans came back from war just like white veterans did. They fought with each other. But when they came back to a different America. White people were able to use GI Bill money that was due them to go to college, send their kids to college, put down payments on homes and start up businesses. Black Americans, on the other hand, Black veterans did not get that money. And that's the reason why we have so many HBCUs to this day. And it's quite amazing that these HBCUs have been able to sustain themselves despite many of them only being created for Black veterans coming back from the war. So those policies have helped to single-handedly continue to bolster the racial gap that we talk about in wealth today.
So I want to make myself clear, and Andre, you can jump in here. I didn't mean specifically why is it an argument with Black people. I meant why is reparations a debate at all? That's really what I mean, Andre.
Well, but I say this, and I halfway joking, but I'm not. White people believe in reparations. Like, just last year, just after a few weeks of being socially distanced, white business leaders stood up and said the federal government owes us money because we had to shut down. And the federal government provided relief in a major way, again, excluding Black people. Check the PPP loan fiasco. But the only time when we argue about reparations is for Black people. The only time. And it's just a reflection of how we devalue Black people in this country, because I guarantee you, if there's any injury to white people, let's check 9/11, reparations there. Let's check throughout history. The New Deal was, in a form of reparations. I mean, so white people believe in it. They just don't believe in it for Black people.
Why is that, Friday?
You know, there was a study done that I had privy to, or I was privy to last week, that literally showed that. The survey, I think 74%, it was 600 people, 74% white folks. And basically the survey vocalized that. They were, yes, I believe in reparations, but when it somehow came down to cash payment, it was a no. It was, we want policies and we want this and that. I think just in the news today, Osceola, Florida, is that how you say it? OCOEE, Florida, they just came out with, that town was another Tulsa. And so for those descendants, I forget who in Florida, but they made sure that now going forward, I think it's about 60 some odd descendants are going to get free education. Free education is great, but if no one's going to hire you and if no one's going to capitalize your ability to formulate a business, then what good are those programs? So I don't really know what the debate is. I think, I hate to say this, I think white folks need to go to therapy. I think they need to get in touch with their own racism. I think that it's been systemic for so long that people don't know how to be different because it's standardized. And with all of my family has been Black, the Black side of my family has been in the military from the Civil War forward, almost in every war, you know, in this country. And because we were Black, don't nobody know who we are. We should be in somebody's book somewhere, you know, written up for this and that just doesn't happen. So I think it's our job to re-educate what the Daughters of the Confederacy have done. It's our job to really retrain white folks, but at the same time, it's their job to do better, because it's their history that got us here. It's their leadership that got us here. It's their governance that got us here. And so it's on them to self-improve. So they need to do therapy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're referring to Ocoee 1920. That was
Thank you, Ocoee. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that was a massacre that certainly happened.
Mm-hmm.
So Chad, go ahead. I know you were jumping in on this.
No, Friday actually hit on the point I wanted to hit on. Is I think there is a general ignorance on the true history of this country just among American citizenry, because we live in a country now that intentionally miseducates us on our own history. So as you heard Friday reference with the Sons and Daughters of the Confederacy, there was a concerted effort coming out of the Civil War to make sure that the narrative coming out of the Civil War was one of Confederate virtue. And that was then codified into our public education system and into our textbooks. So that's why I know as a child growing up, I had maybe one page on slavery. And then it was, you know, we were on the plantations, we might have worked hard, but then we were free and it was Jubilee. That is far from the truth. And omitted from those textbooks are much of what occurred. We were emancipated into disease, death, and sort of a refugee status. We were then, you know, terrorized and lynched for nearly 100 years, and all along the way being disenfranchised. And so I don't think personally that a large swath of the country understands the true history. And so there is a very real education effort that needs to occur. And once we can educate, then we can change minds on what reparations really is, what it represents, and what we are attempting to redress.
Well, you know, a lot of people got to die off for that to happen, you know, Chad, because it's been, like you said, it's been infiltrated into the fabric of America. And these are history books that we were raised on. This is what we know to be true. And there are so many people who don't want to deny what they were taught, and how there are some people who still don't believe slavery even existed. And so I think it's a hard fight to change someone's mind who have been educated for this many years, for decades, about how and what America came to be. I don't know that we can switch that in people's minds unless they were born in 2000.
I believe we have to stand on. Go ahead, Andre.
No, I will say in the last 20 years, according to Gallup polls, the support for reparations was at 13% 20 years ago. It's at 30% now. You're seeing localized reparation programs all over the country. It's changing. I mean, it's changing right before our eyes. Now there's complete resistance, no question about that, to it. But you're seeing a transformation. It's painful, but we are seeing a different culture coming to the fore.
Yeah, I credit that to the year 2000. Anybody who was born in 2000 is now 21. and so now we have a whole generation who's like, oh no, I'm not having this. Run me my money. We have a whole new generation who is like, I don't have to dress like that to go to work. We have a whole new generation who's like, I need to take a mental day off. We have a whole new generation who to them, I don't want to be labeled as gay, straight, heterosexual, bisexual. I want to be what I am. And that's whatever I choose to be today. So absolutely. I believe that we have the year 2000 to thank for turning things around. And these kids today, they aren't falling for the banana in the tailpipe. They just are not. And I'm so appreciative of the millennials and the Gen Z for fighting this fight. I think there was a whole chunk of time that we were smooth sailing a little bit, and y'all could disagree with me, but
I don't think we were smooth sailing. I think we were traumatized and recovering from the death of Malcolm, MLK, Medgar Evers. I mean, freedom rides. The terrorism worked. It was effective. They killed enough of us for us to not want to touch politics. And so I don't know about smooth sailing. It was kind of like, I want you to get a good job. You can go, you can be a doctor, teacher, lawyer. Nobody ever said, I want you to be a politician. I want you to be a congresswoman, a senator. Like I wasn't raised like that. And I'm from that 1970s generation. We thought civil rights made folks civil enough, and it absolutely has not.
Let me take a quick break. Before we go to break, starting next week, soulmates, the Tammi Mac Late Show will be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. All right. So next week, catch me on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Let's go to a quick break, come back, and find out who we talking to for real, for real. They got some projects that you're definitely going to want to grab. Okay. It's Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Next week, don't forget, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the Tammi Mac Late Show. Andre, tell us about Know Your Price, valuing Black lives and property in America's Black cities.
Yeah, there's a racial reckoning around housing, spurred largely apart from this research on devaluation of assets. And one of the things I'm working on is I'm partner with Ashoka. We're giving away $1 million worth of prize money to organizations, firms, and people who are working to solve devaluation. So if you're out there, Google Ashoka Brookings, and you'll find information about this initiative where we are essentially incentivizing people working on housing discrimination.
Chad, the monthly podcast, Politics in Black.
Yes, Politics in Black. So our next show, Sunday, June 13th. We try to tackle issues pertinent to the Black American community and the national reparations fight. It is the public face for our political advocacy in the background. So as far as if you want to connect with us, you can visit NAASDLA.org, or alternatively, you can go to any of our campaigns. We have a campaign to fix the federal reparations bill, fixhr40.com or fixhr40.org. We also are working currently to make sure that out here in California, the AB 3121 task force is open and responsive to the Black American community. So connect with us online, get involved, get engaged. To those young people you were speaking about earlier, they need to get politically engaged and be aware of what's in their best interest and fight for it.
Friday, the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, Los Angeles. How can we get involved?
Yeah, so Chad kind of said everything that I might say. So NAASDLA.org is where you can connect with us. And we are growing our membership. COVID slowed us down. So please, NAASDLA.org. I am Friday Jones on social media. So whether it's Twitter, Facebook, whatever, please engage, reach out. This is my life. This is my work. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here with you tonight, Tammy. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Rashawn, what's coming? Dr. Rashawn, what's coming out of the university? What do we need to know?
Oh, I mean, it's all type of stuff. I mean, I would say the biggest thing is we have a virtual reality training program for law enforcement at the Lab for Applied Social Science Research. And we've been working with law enforcement to help them with de-escalation, and then focusing with lawmakers at the state and federal level to address qualified immunity. I think police department insurance policies and police officer malpractice insurance is the pathway to accountability to help to not only change the system, but to also change the culture that we're talking about today as it relates to reparations.
Thank you so much for being here, Andre, Dr. Rashawn, Chad, and Friday. I appreciate you all for sharing the work that you've done, and please continue it because we need you out there. This concludes the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Remember, next week I'm on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But you can see me every night this week, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Soul. And until tomorrow, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.